Hello, everyone. Thank you for coming to our presentation on getting started with programming. Before we begin, this is only one out of 12 presentations in our series. You can see the list of presentations in the link we will send in the chat. If you missed one of our other seminars that you have wished you could have attended, don't worry. This seminar, along with all the other ones, are being recorded and will be posted on our YouTube as soon as possible.
Okay, I'm Kai. And I'm Bristol. And we're presenting Getting Started with Programming. The first thing when you want to get started with programming, the first thing you gotta do is you gotta figure out what is programming. Programming is how we turn the pile of aluminum parts that has been built into a functional and living robot. And thank you, Alec. And we do And so programming is what allows the robot to interact with the world and lets the drivers interact with the robot. And so now that you know what programming is, what do you program with? There are three main ways that you can program a robot in FTC robotics. There is blocks coding, on-bot coding, and Android Studio coding. And they all have their different benefits and weaknesses. First of all is blocks coding. This is by far the easiest type of program to use, and it's great for new teams that are just getting started, but it lacks the functionality that other versions have, so more advanced teams might not want to use it. And then there's onbot Java. Onbot Java uses Java instead of blocks, and that makes it more challenging to use, but it rewards you by letting you have more control over what code you write. OnBot does have the small problem of it randomly deletes your code, so just be aware if you decide to use OnBot. And lastly is Android Studio. Android Studio is paying to learn, but if you can wade through it and survive, it has the most functionality of any option, and it's great for being used in teams. And I would suggest Android Studio.
Oh, my bad.
You got to go one more back. I would recommend Android Studio to any teams that are advanced and already know Java pretty well. Okay. Now that you know what to program on, you need to know what kinds of programs you'll be making in FTC. The first one, and likely the most basic program, is a teleop program. And these are the programs that allow your robot to interpret inputs from a gamepad or a controller to movements on the field. So this is like when you push forwards on the joystick and your robot drives forwards. And the second type of program is an autonomous program. And these programs control your robot without driver input. It consists of pre-programmed movements and sensor input to tell your robot what to do. And those two are called op modes, operational modes, and those are the basics of your FTC program. And a more advanced program that you can or cannot use, it doesn't really matter, are support programs. And those are things like uh, support classes that can control different parts of your robot separately. And those types of programs are just to help organize your code, and they're not strictly necessary. And so now you're going to ask, so now that I've decided that I'm going to use block coding or Android Studio or whatever, what is your code going to look like? Here's an example of we have block coding on the left and Android Studio on the right. And for onbot is going to look basically the same as the Android Studio with like a couple small tweaks, but this is how your code will look. And the first, oh, and Alex, can you tap the forward one? The first thing you'll notice is at the very top, it has the name. In this case, it's named My First Auto, and it's defined as a teleop code. Thank you, Eleanor. Thank you. And then you can see here, right after the run op mode method for Android Studio, or right at the very start, or yeah, right after the run op mode method, you put your initialization code. This is the type of code that if you always want to start with your claw all the way open, this is when you tell the claw to open at the start. And it just runs at the very start as soon as you press the init button. After that, you'll see a wait for start block. And once it's waited for that start to happen and you press play, it will run this section of code exactly one time. And this is wait, no. Okay, thank you. This code is important because almost all of your autonomous code will likely live in this block, because you only want autonomous code to run a single time right after you press start. And so this is what it's useful for. And then this section here in this while loop, it will loop forever as long as the robot is on. And so what it does is that this is normally what you'd use for teleop, because if you want to check if the joystick has been moved and you want the robot to drive around, you want to cycle and check the joystick as often as possible. So you normally will put teleop code in this block. Yeah. So I do this one.
Okay, so now that you've made your programs and you want to run them on your robot, you need to know how to do that. So obviously your code starts on your computer, and to give it to your robot, you have to download it onto your control hub, which is essentially the brains of your robot. And then that connection can be either USB or via Wi-Fi, because the control hub has like a Wi-Fi hotspot. And to run the code that's been downloaded onto the robot, you need a driver hub or a phone. And what that does is basically communicate with the control hub and tells it which program out of the collection of programs that you've downloaded on it to run. So on the screen, you select a program, hit init, hit start, and then also you connect your gamepads to the driver hub so you can communicate the inputs to the control hub. And that's a Wi-Fi connection.
And now here's a list of resources you might find helpful. We have the Rev hardware client, and this is how you can connect to your robot from a computer. If you need to update software, you need to update the Wi-Fi, and it lets you deploy, and it lets you put code on the robot. Unfortunately, it's only available on Windows, so you have to make sure that you have a Windows computer to do it on. And then if you need help, the FTC Discord is a great place to ask. I've had to ask many questions there, and there are plenty of people that are happy to help and get people started. And I would also recommend our Codecademy Java tutorial. That's how I learned to code Java.
That's how I learned to code Java as well.
And so I would say it's a really useful tool to just kind of get your foot in the door when you are starting to program.
I'd also like to shout out Game Manual 0, because that's a resource released by FTC that has a lot of useful software, example programs, and general advice.
Yes, yeah, I would agree. That's a very useful website.
Okay. And if you have any questions, you can reach out to us on our Instagram or our email. And yeah.
Okay. That's all. Thank you.
Okay, so before you go, we have sent a Google form in the chat. We would appreciate it if you could fill out your contact information so we can notify you of future events. The seminar schedule has also been sent in the chat in the form of a Google Doc as well.